Okay, we're gonna go ahead and start with Javon's question here. Um, she says she's a senior analyst on HR team at AICPA, and she's interested in hearing what participants are doing during these times, and she'd like to share that with her recruiting team. So, is there anyone on the call right now that is networking in a new way that maybe they would like to share with the group? And I'm gonna stop talking and give everybody a minute to think about that question, so you don't have to be afraid to speak up.
I can start if you want. I do think with everything going on, I've been networking and communicating in a lot different way than what I'm used to. I love face-to-face interactions and going to social events, and obviously we can't do that now. So one of the challenges that I've seen is that I've had to be way more intentional about the relationships that I have and that I keep carrying on. And it's goes from personal relationships all the way to professional ones to I know just last week I touched base with one of my MBA partners who we got through the MBA together, and we had like a virtual chat last week and to catch up on everything. And so that's really helped me to be more connected and not feel so isolated from everyone during these times. I am a mentor for Action Greensboro this summer. So I have two mentees who are um, going to be 2020 graduates at the end of this year, or maybe spring 21. They're really uncertain about what the job market's going to be and what they're going to encounter. So the thing that I wanted to share today and kind of get across is that sort of intention and putting it out into the atmosphere that you're looking for something, and that can really help you get through this time.
That's great. Thank you, Carey.
Um,
We go ahead, Daryl.
to touch on Carey's point, I was actually just reading an article in the New York Times last week. I get their like early morning millennials newsletter or whatever, and it was talking about reconnecting and how a lot of the times we'll reach out to people that we stay in touch with every so often, but you should connect with someone who you haven't talked to in a few years. Like, I graduated in 2011, and so check on that person who you graduated with and haven't seen in however many years, because at that point, one, it's a natural time right now. It's not weird. It's, hey, you came to mind. I was checking on people that I haven't talked to in a while. We were roommates, or we were like down the hall from one another. Just wanted to check in and see how you were doing. But also, if you are looking to connect about a new position, yeah, I'm kind of checking the job market out. It's a little shaky right now, but I see that you're working here on LinkedIn. What kind of opportunities do you all have? And it kind of naturally leads in because you genuinely do care about their well-being, but still it's a way to reconnect and open up a door that not was closed, but one that you really hadn't walked through again. So it was a pretty good read, and it was by a guy. Actually, I just tried to pull it up. Um, it was by one of their regular writers, Adam Grant. And so, yeah, I would definitely say check that article out. I'll drop the link in the chat.
Yeah, please do that.
Yeah.
I think that's really good. This session that we're doing right now, like I said, is being recorded. So this will be available to students. So as you're thinking about your responses, think about your experience and what's been successful for you, and we'll make this available to students that might want to have access to it. I know that Megan has resources that all of her graduate students can access easily. So we'll be sure to include this in here. So be thinking about that in your responses. Daryl, thank you so much for that. Dale's dropped a link into the chat for us, and I will also include that in our follow-up email that will go out with any resources that we discuss here today. Okay, so the question was, what are you doing differently right now for networking? Does anybody else have any responses for that they want to share?
Hate to jump back in, but I actually am currently, while I am employed and gainfully so, I am on the job hunt, just looking for a culture that's a little bit of a better fit for me. And I've been able to reach out and look through newsletters of places that I actually know I want to work. So I'm in the nonprofit field. I've been in fundraising for 7 years now. And so there are nonprofits who, in order to keep up with what they do, how they're fundraising, how they're marketing effectively, I'll sign up for their newsletters just to read them. But they often also have, hey, we're hiring for this position. And so looking through that, seeing how what network I have there, and just really trying to be judicious in selecting a place that I say, oh, I've interacted with this place. I've been to a couple of their events. I like the way that they work and their community there, and interviewing the people that I want to work with, getting to know them as leaders, checking them out. So I definitely say, like, look through your newsletters. Like, we get a lot of spam all the time, but if it's a local place and you know that they're hiring for something at this time, if you already have that relationship, why not, tap on somebody's shoulder and say, hey, I'm interested in this place. Do you know the person who's hiring for this or the person who's managing this? Could you make an introduction, a soft introduction on LinkedIn or something like that? And that's how I'm on right now. Knock on wood, hopefully the last interview with an organization. And it happened because my pastor introduced me to the executive director of this nonprofit, and we just hit it off.
That's great. Yeah, that's pulling in your personal network. And I think it was Carey that said, or maybe it was Daryl, I can't remember now, which one of you pointed out that letting people know of your intentions is really important, because you don't know who your direct contacts may be in touch with that are looking to hire. So it's good to let your networks know exactly what you're looking for so they can help you. Okay, so a lot of people probably joined us today because maybe when they graduated, there was also a recession happening. Does anybody want to share maybe obstacles that they faced post-graduation during your own time? We would love to hear that. And then as a follow-up to that, when you share those obstacles, what did you do to overcome them? What were some steps that you took to find the opportunity in those obstacles?
I'm happy to go. When I graduated from undergrad, it was 2006, so don't do the math on that one. But during that time, if you remember, there was kind of some financial things that were happening, and then in 2008, kind of with that crash that happened. But when I graduated in 2006, it was just really trying to be intentional in where I was applying for the jobs that I wanted, and looking at opportunities, but also knowing, and this is something that I share with all of the students that I now work with. We have a lot of technologies now that were not around in 2006. So, filling out paper applications and, putting them in the mail, like, I hate to say back in my day, and that wasn't that long ago, but there were paper applications that you then had to take to the post office, and you just prayed that they got to where that they needed to be. So now when the job search is a little bit easier in the sense that we have all of these different technologies that you can use. And so, making sure that you're utilizing LinkedIn, that is a tool. Making sure that you're connecting with people. I think a great way, especially for students or even alumni, is utilizing LinkedIn, and you can do just different search strings of the specific industry that you want to work in, plus the Bryan school or plus UNCG, plus a specific company. And it will populate people that fit that criteria. And there could be some people that maybe you went to school with that, are working in that space for a specific company that you're interested in. But also knowing you have to continue to apply for jobs. So it really is a numbers game. So you want to narrow your search to opportunities that you're interested in or that you want to work for and that are good fits to you. But you also want to be consistent, and you want to apply. And so I think especially now, knowing that, yes, here we are in a COVID-19 world, we will be post-COVID-19 at some point in the future. But there are still companies that are out there hiring right now. And so, using LinkedIn as a resource, using Handshake. So Handshake is a great resource, not only for our students, but also for alumni. And I know sometimes alumni or even graduate students can get on and think that maybe the jobs are very junior level, because those are the opportunities that are being posted by our employers, because we have, you know, a lot of undergrad students that are here, but it's also an opportunity to find an employer that is actually hiring for people. And so where that might be a junior level role for an alumni or for a graduate student, at least you now have pinpointed that this is an organization that is actually hiring right now. And so go to that organization's website and see what opportunities that they have available. So I think, you know, for me, it was persistence. So, you know, continuing to apply for jobs, and I'm not ashamed to say it took me 6 months to find a job after graduation. But the persistence was the key. But now there's so many tools that are just at our fingertips because of the world that we live in with technology, and that you want to make sure that you're using all of the tools that you have at your disposal to find those opportunities and to be persistent in your search.
Megan, thank you. You know, persistence, in our last session, we heard polite persistence, I think. I think that's a really good point. She mentioned Handshake. Many of you might not be familiar with that. It's a recruiting tool that businesses use to recruit students on campus or at the university. So I think that's a great point. I've never heard anybody mention just see who's out there hiring to then see like what other opportunities they might have if you're on Handshake. I think that's a great point. So we've heard be intentional, reconnecting, and persistence so far as some themes coming out from what you should be taking into your networking and where you should be looking. So, okay, I'm going to jump.
Strategic. Sorry to interrupt, but I would also say, you know, being strategic in those searches, being strategic again with how you're connecting or networking with people. You want those things to be genuine and authentic in who you are, but you also want to be strategic in the nature of how you're going about maybe rekindling a relationship that was there, or, you know, reaching out to someone on LinkedIn. A lot of recruiters are on LinkedIn, so if there's specific companies that you're interested in working for, I know now within that space, the employers are using technology just as much as we are. So instead of like maybe coming to a campus or doing those types of things, or having people come to like open house events, they're doing different recruitment events online, where you can, you know, get on a Zoom call and it's kind of like an information session, but that way you're able to connect with someone who actually works within that recruitment team space that can tell you a little bit more about that company, that industry, and the opportunities that they have. And you can find those a lot of, again, on LinkedIn. They'll post them and have people sign up for those types of events as well.
Yeah, that's really good. What other obstacles have people faced during their career? I'll just share an interesting part of my career. When I was first graduating, when I had just graduated from UNCG, I found the job that I got post-graduation on Craigslist. I don't know that very many people do that nowadays, but you know, you might want to look in places you didn't think you would normally look. I'll just throw that out there, as it could be a place where you could find something you weren't expecting, or something you didn't know was local. I don't imagine a lot of people are saying, go job hunting on Craigslist. But, you know, leave no stone unturned, because I know there are still people posting stuff out there. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next question. So one thing that I do want to cover is that I feel like a lot of people who are looking for positions right now probably feel very overwhelmed. You know, especially with people saying, you know, make sure you look everywhere for a job like Craigslist. you need to really know how to prioritize your time. Certainly a lot of us are being pulled in many different directions right now, and time might not be something that you have. So I wanted to get thoughts from the group on best ways for people to prioritize their time. Where should they really be focusing their efforts? And if that's on a specific platform, share that. If that's maybe a certain action step, I want to hear from the group on what you guys have experienced and would share on that.
So when I graduated in 2011, and we were in the middle of, or second half of the downturn economically, it was very challenging. So I'll give some background. I had an internship at a financial advising firm, I think the summer before my sophomore and junior years, and had received a job offer. And this was 2008. And so as a financial advisor firm, I'm like, oh, cool. This is wonderful. Turns out it was a smaller firm. They weren't able to withstand the downturn. And so they withstood it, but my position was no longer there. And so I was like, wow, I've invested 2 summers with these people, and now the opportunity is no longer in front of me. And so once 2011 hit, I was a 5-year senior, or 5th-year senior, so an extra year. But 2011 came, and I graduated and didn't have the dream job that I thought I would have. What I ended up doing is I worked at Target for a little while, to pay rent, but I was up like time isn't what you have, but right after graduation and you don't have a job, really, time is really what you have. So I just bought a coffee machine, like an old fashioned, there was no Keurig then, I don't think. Bought a coffee machine and was making coffee all night, just plugging away. Like Megan said, just put in applications because it's a numbers game at that point. And eventually I was able to secure a job in Charlotte. And I was like, I want to be in Charlotte. Charlotte's where business is happening right now. Great. And I got it, but it was just numbers. I mean, I was up all night on LinkedIn, on monster.com. I was on Craigslist. I was everywhere just putting out everything because it is a numbers game, especially at a time when there are more people who need jobs than there are jobs that are hiring for. So, you want to get out there, and it's a numbers game. It's a quality game too, because you don't want to put out junk. Like my resume was top notch. My cover letter, even if it didn't say that you had to have a cover letter, I put a cover letter in. And yeah, there were some that were generic, and there were some positions I really wanted where I tailored the cover letter, but they might not read it. But at least you gave it to them, because the people who didn't give it to them, they're like, oh, this person's not willing to go above and beyond when we have an abundance and the market is super saturated with people looking for jobs. So I'd definitely say numbers game and be on LinkedIn. And if you have the time, stay up an hour extra, dedicate that extra time if you can.
That's good. That's really good. Thanks, Daryl. Who else?
I'll share a little bit of my story and my background. So I graduated UNCG in economics and environmental studies. And right out of UNCG, I went to work for Kohl's because it was kind of difficult to find something in my field that encompassed both majors, and I wanted to be able to use my sustainability and business background together. I then went on to get a master's degree to open up more opportunities and more doors and connections. And I will reiterate pretty much a lot of points that were already said that are incredibly important in terms of prioritizing, being intentional with the connections. I utilized for my job search, I utilized Indeed. LinkedIn for sure was a huge one. And then also following up with the existing connections that you made. I would say something like, even if you haven't reached out to them in a couple months or a few months, just check in with them, see how they're doing, see what's changed in their organization. Send in an article that you think is interesting or some thoughts that you had just to start up a conversation. I would also say something that was also helpful is, of course, like reconnecting with like former classmates and kind of learning a little bit more about their journey and how they've navigated. It really is a numbers game. It is, I remember not feeling good about it being a numbers game, but it is. And I know that adds more stress and more pressure. But the more you get out there, the more people you talk to, the more doors you open. And the thing is, you just never know where a conversation's going to lead. So just keep being intentional, keep being authentic, and you'll open more doors than you realize.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that too. One thing that I'm trying to emphasize with students and interns that I work with is to not just do cold emailing where you find on LinkedIn, oh, this person works at this company and they're in HR, and you send them an email with your resume and say, hey, here's my resume, and then that's it. It's a lot more effective because if you make it more personal, like Daryl was saying, always, always, always have a cover letter and make it unique to that posting that you're applying to. But also, instead of doing that cold, email to the HR manager, maybe instead of sending that to the HR manager, find somebody on LinkedIn in that department that you're trying to apply to, and instead of saying, "Hey, here's my resume," say, "Hey, I saw this job posting. What is something that you love about working with this company that I should think about if I'm thinking about applying?" And so what that does is it opens up more of a conversation with them. The other thing I like to tell students and interns that I work with is that people love talking about themselves. And so the more that you can get that from them and say, like, what is your experience? What do you like about this company? And make it sort of a pitch and turn around. And they may or may not respond, but they'll probably remember your name if your resume comes across their desk.
That's really, really good. I like that a lot. Another handy tool you can use on LinkedIn is finding alumni that work at the companies that you're interested in. So if you can do everything Carey said, and maybe even find somebody who's a graduate of UNCG, Spartans, we take care of ourselves, so we want to help out people who are like us, and it's always good to compliment the person that you're trying to reach out to. Like Carey said, people love to talk about themselves, so I think that's some really great tips there. Who else?
Hi, my name is Derek. One thing that's not talked about a lot, particularly during periods we have, economic downturn, what we're in right now, is, self-branding. I'm not sure if anyone mentioned this, but what I've really been focusing on is, trying to be a business of one, utilizing, like everybody has said, utilizing LinkedIn, utilizing their networks, but also kind of, I don't think enough graduates see themselves as a business. And so as a business, you got to look at how do I brand myself? How do I self-brand? How do I, kind of build a brand around my skills and my knowledge? And what I typically do is, like everyone said, I really try hard to utilize LinkedIn. I add content to LinkedIn. I'm trying to add more content to LinkedIn. I also kind of build an ecosystem around my abilities, and I try to contribute to the space that I'm in. So, and I do this in my current job. I do this outside my job. I do this on LinkedIn. I try to, there's something called the 90-10 rule, which is basically, sell yourself, 90% of the content you use to sell yourself, direct that to 10% of the highest influencers out there, the people who can get you exposed to clients and other businesses that can see your content, and then you kind of become you sort of build your worth in the highest areas in your field. So there's something, that's the 90-10 rule. You want to kind of expose yourself to the top 10 people with 90% of your content. I just really try to sell myself. Yeah, sorry?
Can you give us an example of maybe how you've done that, Derek?
Yeah, so there are some really, there's some really powerful influencers in my space. I'm in IT and IoT. So there are, what I do is I go out there and I look up, the top influencers in IoT, which is a term for Internet of Things, is a way of connecting devices on the internet. And I may comment on their threads in LinkedIn or maybe even Facebook or any kind of social media platform. I'll make comments to people who are commenting on their threads, or I might write an article on something, and I might post it on, a link to that article on their stream, their social media stream, so that the people who follow them, or even those people, those influencers, will comment on that. And what that does is sort of creates a viral effect. So, you want name recognition. I think a lot of us think that all I need to do is reach out to employer A, B, and C and send my resume. The worst thing you can do in a recession is send out your resume to all these, job openings. You need to find a way to connect with people, open up lines of communication with the people in those fields and people who are well known in those fields. If you have to even reach out to the CEO, but don't just reach out for the sake of reaching out. Sort of create a brand market for yourself that you can expose to those people, either through their social media post or even through their company website. And I just really try to, I strategize around my brand. I create ways of reaching out to people, and I build a list of contacts and people that I have gotten responses back, and sort of build this list of potential clients.
That's fascinating. That's so great. Thank you for sharing that with us. Daryl, I actually interviewed Daryl. Wait, there you are. I guess it was maybe about a year ago.
Yeah, it's been a while now. What is time right now?
Right? Yeah, so I think personal branding is huge. And I'm so glad you brought that up, because I think a lot of new graduates really struggle with that. Especially if you were like me, I'm also a UNCG alumna, but I didn't graduate from the Bryan school. And so I kind of graduated with not really very much clear direction on what I wanted to do. And I think anything a student can do to establish a brand, know what it is that you are about and what it is that you're looking for, I think is a really important step before you start putting resumes out anywhere. Because like we talked about earlier, if you're connecting with your first circle and second circle of your network, knowing exactly what you're looking for makes it much easier for people to help you too. And Daryl, I know that you've got stuff to say about more things to add to what Derek talked about, because I actually interviewed Daryl about personal branding for a video blog thing that we did last year. And so I think Daryl has been, as I've seen, a great example of personal branding from Daryl. So I'm going to let Daryl kind of talk about that.
Thanks, Derek. You definitely hit nails on the head with so much of that, and like creating content. So I had a blog for 6 years on the Daniels Daily Reader, and 5 days a week I was putting out content about being a young professional development, and it actually started off solely about professional development. And as I grew in my career and grew professionally, I realized that lifestyle and professionalism, especially these days, are intertwined so closely that then I started talking about, okay, how can you speak on issues within a corporate setting while maintaining your professionalism, while not compromising your morals? And like my brand continued to expand, and it got me a ton of writing opportunities. I've written for a couple of national publications on it. I got to be featured and be interviewed by Maddie, so that was really cool. But
that's the most important thing to know.
it was better than 2020. So yeah, I mean, it was, but I really focused on creating a brand for myself that spoke to what I was passionate about, which is helping young people really paint themselves as they want to be painted. And I'm a storyteller. I love telling stories, and that's what your brand is doing, is telling the story of you. If I have it with me, my bookshelf is right here. There's a book, but I can't find it quickly. There's a book called Building a Story Brand. The author is Donald Miller. Great book. I strongly recommend it. Somebody must have taken it off my desk, but yeah, amazing book. Talks about building a brand, and it doesn't talk about necessarily personal branding, but it's applicable in both ways. And talks about how you can sell what you're trying to sell. And when you talk about your brand, you're talking about yourself. How do I sell myself to a company? And they're paying for your time. Your time is the commodity that they're buying. So the people who get paid a lot of money, their time then is more of a draw. Like that, if I'm getting an hourly salary or hourly amount, then they're paying per hour. If they're paying me $600,000, then they expect to be able to call me on Sunday evening at 7 p.m. And some Sundays I can say no, but some Sundays I can't. So like that's the commodity that you're selling. You're selling that time, and really telling people, okay, well, this is how you really make sure that people know your time is valuable and compensate you for that. And so yeah, for 6 years I did that, and then I just got tired of writing every day, honestly. And so I took 2 months overseas. Me and my wife and I decided to rebrand some, and I then decided I was going to move into podcasting because that's cool now, and I had to get used to hearing my own voice. But yeah, it's all about how can you continue to grow your story and continue to grow your brand and make people want to be a part of that. And that's what I found to be the case in personal branding, in marketing and fundraising. It's all about the story. Like, people like good stories.
Absolutely. I think, what you're doing, I think, is great. I think the problem with graduates, and particularly during periods like this, they have to distinguish themselves. Mm-hmm. Everybody is more than the sum of their parts, and then we got to look at it like that. We got to see that there's so many things, there's so many talents. I'm a 2016 UNC grad, but the one thing I liked about the Bryan School was that I met so many eclectic people who had a lot to offer. There's people out there, I tell these students, I say, you have more to offer than you think. Just dig deep into your psyche and understand how you can sell what you have on top of your education, to these companies. And here's another thing I tell people. I say, look, don't walk into a company if you happen to get in touch with somebody in a company. You tell them what you can do for them. Don't tell them what your job skills is. Say, I noticed that you're working on this new project with this hydroelectric company. Let me tell you what I've done in the past and how I would have solved the problems that you're currently facing. You got to be a problem solver. That's what people want to buy. That's what people are going to hire you for. They want to hire you because you can solve problems for them. And if you don't present yourself as a problem solver, they're not going to hire you, period.
Yeah, one of the things I feel like that's changed in the last 10 or 15 years. And so I also, like Daniel, graduated 2011. Took me about a year to find a job after that. And I'm in the apparel industry, which has hit pretty hard every recession, especially right now. But one of the things I think has changed in terms of rules for job hunting and job search and social media, especially on LinkedIn, is the idea that you have to kind of mask kind of who you are to get that job. And so one of the things I think that Gen Z has really got their eye on for those younger ones who are coming in is they want to be authentic and they want to present themselves authentically. So one of the things I've noticed recently is, especially on LinkedIn, a lot more outpouring of support for like Black Lives Matter movement. So if I don't think that there's a problem with putting that out there in social media, even on a professional platform, because and what I tell students is what you want to think about, if that's something that's really important to you, you don't want to be hired by an employer that doesn't also identify with something that's authentic and important to you, versus the sort of working mentality that's been before. You have to kind of swallow your pride and kind of keep your mouth shut to keep working. I do think that part of our culture is in a shift right now. And I think that's really exciting for for the job seekers right now.
Yeah, I definitely agree, Carey. I actually got let go from a job about 4 years ago. But when, Trayvon Martin, Eric Garner, Michael Brown, all those previous things that happened and really ignited the Black Lives Matter organization and movement, I'm fully for it. And so I put on my blog, I was talking about the intersectionality between lifestyle and professionalism, and I said Black Lives Matter. Best job I had. They were like, no, like they saw the post on Friday. On Monday, they were like, hey, box your stuff up, because it did not align with them. So I think now the outpouring of support and the Generation Z, like they say, yo, we want to be authentic, and you need people to work. So if you don't let us be us, then you won't have a workforce. So I really love the stance that this generation is taking, because we don't have to be quiet when things are important about humanities. But there are some companies that still, they are of that mindset, and the question is, do you want to work there? Is it countercultural for you to work there? And if it is, you'll get all the money in the world, but you will be unhappy. And I'll tell you, it's not worth being, feeling like your soul is gone because you have a bank account that you could, jump like Scrooge McDuck into. It's just not worth it.
And the Black Lives Matter, that is just one of the pillars that people can stand on. But for somebody else, it might be, I'm really interested in sustainability. They might not want to work for Walmart, for example, if they feel like Walmart doesn't care about the environment or other things that are important to them. So that's where I feel like being true to yourself, putting that out there, again, with the intentionality of putting that out there, that will attract employers to you if that's a value that they have. And if they can see that you are outspoken on something that aligns with their values, then it will put you in a better spot with them.
That's so good. Authenticity, another theme for today. Daryl, can you remind us of the book that you were going to suggest, Building a Story?
Yep, I dropped it in the chat. It's called Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller.
Okay, great. Thank you. Some people just joined us. So if you did, please put your degree year, your location, and why you're joining us. We don't have any students on this call right now, but we are recording the session, and we will be sharing this after the fact with students who are interested in what we're discussing today. And so I'll just recap real quick. We've got about 15 minutes until 1. Being intentional with your relationships, reconnecting with people, persistence, that polite persistence, self-branding, strategy in your searches and in your communications, and authenticity, all really, really good things to keep in mind. You guys are great. We don't need a moderator. We don't need, one speaker. All of your experiences speak really loudly. And I think that, I think a lot of people will get something out of what we're talking about. So, I want to make sure that I give the opportunity to the people on the call right now that are on the Bryan School Alumni Association board. If you would do a thumbs up or the clap reaction or just wave, so that everyone can see how many people from the board we have. All right, Daryl and Rory and Carey and
Latoya as well down there. She's not on camera.
So we have the Bryan School Alumni Association is something you're automatically a part of post-graduation, but we do have an existing board that puts together events and networking opportunities. In fact, this exact session was sort of a brainchild of the Bryan School Alumni Association board. And we just welcomed, I think, 7 new members to the board last night at our board meeting. And so those people will serve for about 2 years, and every year we welcome new members to the board with an application process that starts in January. So there's lots of ways for you to deepen your network as a graduate. So I would encourage you to make sure that that you stay involved. the Bryan School Alumni Association board recently just voted to start including just regular members of the association on their different committees. Right now it's a fundraising committee, an events committee, and an alumni outreach committee. There will be opportunities for you to get connected with other alumni in different areas and in different stages of their careers. This is a really great way to grow your network. Right now we're doing a lot of virtual interaction like this. The board itself is meeting virtually still, but these are opportunities that are out there that I would encourage people who haven't yet looked into that to do so. If you're on this call right now, you're probably getting the Bryan School alumni emails. Stay in touch with those. We want to be a valuable resource to people and not a spam function. So thank you to our board members that are here joining us today to share some of their tips and tricks in the job search. If anybody has a question that they've been holding on to that they feel like they would like to ask, please feel free to put it in the chat. In the meantime, I'm going to ask a question about pivoting. And let's say that you are in a career right now, but you would like to make a transition. I imagine some of you probably have done that. I think we've heard from Daryl on some of his transitions. Does anybody have any advice or tips on things that they can do if they want to make a major career shift going from one industry perhaps to another? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I'm happy to go because if anyone ever looks at my LinkedIn or even my resume, I have worked in many different industry spaces. So I've worked in career and professional development as I do now, but even when I started my career, it was events management, working at a nonprofit. Then I went into corporate America and worked for a Fortune 500 company doing staffing and recruiting. And then I transitioned into higher ed. So if you really look at my resume or LinkedIn as a whole, it's like, how do any of these things even relate to each other? But I think to kind of piggyback on what Daryl was talking a little bit earlier, just your brand and the story, but that's where you have to connect those dots for recruiters. So even if you're wanting to pivot into a different space, there are transferable skills, or what are the skills and abilities that you have that you've learned, or the knowledge that you have that really correlate with whatever that role is within that industry that you're wanting to pivot into. So making it easy for them, highlighting what those things are, talking about it in a cover letter, and really building that story and painting that picture, building that bridge, however you want to say it. Those things are really important. And so I think for me, those are things that I've done. I've been able to paint that picture throughout my resume with what I have done in those roles, to really make it easy for whoever is reading my resume to really understand, okay, starting way back in 2006 when she started this role, a lot of things that she's been good at is building relationships. So how is that relationship building, those coalitions of people that you're working with, whether it's in, sales or whatever that is, but building that bridge and making that known with the skills that you have that are on your resume. So I think for me, that's been a big thing.
How have you made the decision of where you wanted to pivot to? That's one thing I've struggled with. Is I know I'm not seeing the growth and getting the enjoyment out of where I'm at, but I'm having a lot of trouble making that decision of what do I want to do next?
Yeah, that's a big question. And I've been there too. It's just, when you're so talented and you have lots of passions, it's hard to pick one thing to brand yourself around. I think that's definitely an obstacle. For me, I think finding companies that you align with, passionately on all the levels that we've spoken about before, I think is a great place to start. And to Megan's point, you know, thinking about what your transferable skills are, what your core skills are, and figuring out, just maybe by researching what's out there in these companies that you align with, you know, see where you see alignment with those skills and what they're looking for. And then I think Daryl's suggestion to get on these newsletters is a brilliant way to dig deeper into some of these companies and finding out, you know, what they're about. Does anybody else want to chime in on Rory's question?
Yeah, definitely. So Rory, one thing my dad told me in high school, because I remember asking him why I have to take chemistry. I don't care about science. I'm never going to need these things. What's the point? And I think we've all been there at some point, at one point or another. You know, you have to take gen ed classes, X, Y, and Z. But my dad told me it's so they know that you have the discipline to do well in the class and learn the material. So all employers know, you know, we have college degrees, everyone on here. We can learn the information. So they know they can teach us whatever they need to teach us. Like, learning isn't the hard part. It's, are you a good fit? And so it's selling that personality, saying, hey, I'm a people person. I'm a good fit for this culture. I like the way you all do work. I'm invested in your mission. I think they can teach you anything. Like, you know, you can go to law school right now and 3 years from now come out and be a top performing attorney. You can learn anything. It's making sure that personality, you're making that impression on people. But I think that, you know, figure out what you like, and then you can learn it. Like, if you say, you know, I want to go into corporate marketing, but you have a finance degree, you can learn the marketing side of things. If that's where your passion is, you can develop that passion. I think it's just selling yourself on, hey, I'm here, I'm interested in learning, I'm interested in making sure that it's selling your determination and your ethics and your integrity, I think. And not selling it in the bad way, but like selling them on the fact that you're ethical and have integrity.
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback off that. The advice that my parents gave me, and I'm a first generation college student, they said, just go and do what doesn't feel like work. And so I entered undergrad in 2007. So right when everything was kind of crashing down, and it wasn't, to most people, probably the smartest time to go for a fashion design degree, when everything was kind of collapsing around. But I want to point it back to what Daryl said of like making sure that the culture that you're finding is going to be important. So you might say, what doesn't feel like work? Well, I love walking my dog. Somebody turned that into an app called Rover, and, you know, made a lot of money on that. But you could also turn that into, maybe I want to work in a culture where like I can bring my dog to work, or that after COVID is over, I'm allowed to work from home to hang out with my dog, you know, as an example. But I think another thing to think about from a career pivot standpoint, as skills change, especially people who have been in the industry or in your role for a long time, you might see, especially now with everything changing to virtual interactions, some parts of industries are dying or going away, and companies and people are learning that you can do different things, you know, remotely that we didn't think were possible. So a great example in the apparel industry, if any car students are going to jump in and listen to this later, is you know, taking advantage of your, you know, alma mater, your current university. Virtual product creation is a huge piece of what the apparel industry is going to. And I know the cars department right now teaches the V-Stitcher program. That's one great example of something that is an industry change that's happening. So people can go back and get retraining on that. Another good example would be things that I see out there that are really popping right now in terms of jobs that are out there, are things around supply chain and logistics. And those are all things that the Bryan School already has in their curriculum. And I know that there's certificate programs as well. Another thing I like to call out is, especially now, there's a lot of free online programs that you can get into. I know, I think Harvard has one as well where you can take online classes. And so I think showing that and doing those, figuring out what you want to do, and, you know, going back to social media, whether it's Facebook or LinkedIn, and showing that you've done this thing or been interested in this, can help broaden that net for you.
That's great. I just kind of want to add to that. So when I graduated from the Bryan School, another thing that I did while I was working at Kohl's was I was looking up some nonprofit organizations in my area and reaching out to them to see if they needed any help with volunteering for events. I understand events are canceled right now, but just kind of being able to talk to them and being able to like help them. So I actually ended up volunteering for two organizations. They didn't really lead into any potential jobs or anything, but it was a good way to get out there, network, speak with people, kind of learn and understand a different business, their process, um, just to kind of get your feet wet. So I would also want to pass on that suggestion to students that listen to this call later on, is don't shy away from just reaching out and volunteering your help. That could be another thing that you could always talk up and bring up in an interview if it could help.
Absolutely. All right, we've got about 2 more minutes. I would like to add on something that I experienced before I had the job I have now. I was fired from a position that I didn't have for very long at all. And so I was job hunting 2 years ago, and I was really wanting to make a career shift. And one thing that I did was try to have a physical conversation with somebody about what they had done in their career and what I was trying to do in my career every week. Sometimes as many as I could get in that week, but the goal was one of these conversations per week. And I think you will find that reaching out to people who you admire, people who are more experienced, they've got a lot of, transition probably that you don't even know about, and connections that you might not know about. So to Janisha's point, one of the groups that I volunteer with, I reached out to one of the ladies who I'd been volunteering on this committee with for 10 plus years, and she ended up connecting me with the head of a marketing firm because I really wanted to go into marketing and community outreach. And my background was geography and GIS. So when she made that connection for me, she basically verified to this person that I was a good person to look at. I mean, she went out on a limb and put her reputation on the line for me. And what ended up happening is that she connected me with him, and then he connected me with someone else who was looking to hire somebody in marketing. And this is actually before I was fired. This is a different career transition. But that goes to say that having conversations with people now is so important, because that is where you're going to see find it easier to get in with a company that you might be interested in. So I would encourage you to make sure that you're having conversations with people that you respect, and learning more about their journey. And I think inadvertently you might find connections you didn't know that they had that you needed. All right, are there any other questions or burning advice that anybody wants to share before we drop off? We are already over time. I don't want to take up too much of your time.
One more second. I definitely advise keeping a group of advisors. So have somebody you can talk to who can give you some outside perspective sometimes. We all have, when we're looking for jobs, of course, we all have the goal of getting the job, but make sure that you always, there are times where I'm trying to make a decision and I'll call one of my best friends who's in HR and be like, hey, should I reach out to this person in this way or in that way? Should I wait another week to call because they haven't called back or not? And just get that second opinion sometimes, because our instinct is, we're humans. Survival is the thing. Like, our minds work to survive, but sometimes we have to step outside of ourselves and say, well, yeah, but there are a bunch of protests going on right now and they're in a service industry. And so he's probably not gotten back to you because he's been busy for the past week. And you're like, maybe I'll give him another week before I reach out. Like, sometimes taking yourself out of the I need to survive mindset and going to talk to some of your advisors or friends. It's important to have those people who who you can lean on, that, it's more than just sitting around talking about football, but also can give you some good professional advice.
That's great. All right. Thank you so much, everyone who's participated and enjoyed the conversation. I know that I have. I learned a lot. You guys are amazing. I will definitely be sharing this exact Bryan Breakroom session with our job transitions folks who came 2 weeks ago. I think a lot of topics that we touched on here we didn't even get to cover last time. So I really appreciate everyone who has joined us today. Don't forget, I'll be following up with a survey and a few of the links that we talked about. And if you don't be afraid to reach out to me on LinkedIn, or I would imagine anybody on this call would be happy to do that. So just look us all up if you're interested. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your afternoon. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, y'all. Have a good one.
Bye.